What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Sean Barnard, and I'm back with some breaking news in the world of the Sixers. That is that Montrezl Harrell has torn his ACL, so I'm here to break down how that will impact the Sixers, Montrezl Harrell, as well as why we just can't get away from Doc Rivers. So to jump right into it, I want to start off with the breaking news that was brought by Shams Charania here that 76ers center Montrezl Harrell suffered a torn ACL and meniscus after undergoing an MRI Wednesday to assess the right knee swelling following his offseason workouts. So this does mean that the Sixers will be without Montrezl Harrell. He's one of the several centers that have been brought back. We know the Montrezl Harrell story that he was brought in last offseason. He is a guy that has ties with Daryl Morey. Morey, of course, drafted him with the Houston Rockets when Montrezl Harrell was first coming out of Louisville. Spent his first couple years with the Rockets before being traded to the Clippers, where he had his best years under Doc Rivers. So there was kind of connections from both sides. Harrell's very much a well-liked player and person within the organization. And to his credit, even though it has not been as imagined on the court, he's been a very, very highly regarded locker room presence that all the guys have liked what he's brought to this team. We've seen him on the sideline hyping up Joel Embiid, getting into fights with Giannis after the game for shooting free throws, things like that. So Harrell has been a good guy to have around, but it just not has translated on the basketball floor. And this is a guy that we have seen climb to the heights of a six-man of the year candidate, an instant bench offense, one of the prototypical off-the-bench pieces that you have thought of the past NBA, but he just does not quite have it in the tank anymore. And this is even more disappointing from Montrezl Harrell's perspective, that it's very clear that he's lost some athleticism. And when you think of Montrezl Harrell as a basketball player, it's these high-flying dunks, these catching lobs, pounding your chest at opponents, this energy, this effort, this athleticism, and he just kind of has lost a shade off that. And it is amazing to me that he's only 29 years old. He plays like he's significantly older, and this is coming from the same Sixers team that had a revolving door of centers with no legs left, whether it be Paul Millsap or Dwight Howard or Andre Drummond. Drummond was okay, I'll give him credit. Or, Amir Johnson, Greg Monroe, the list goes on and on. Boban Marjanovic. You can make a real argument that Montrezl Harrell was the worst of the bunch. And the reason that I say that is because with all these guys, there is at least a size there. Montrezl Harrell stands 6'7", and that's just not center size in today's NBA. And he always overcame that because of the athleticism. But with his legs taking a little bit of a slip, him not quite having that in the tank anymore, not having the springs to get up, contest shots, slam dunks home, and catch lobs, it's really a huge letdown for who he is as a player. And especially now with the ACL injury, it's frustrating that this might be the end of the line for Montrezl Harrell. He is a guy that truly loves basketball, and you see him in the offseason playing pickup and all these different pro-ams. It's awesome. He's a guy that just loves the game. I have no doubt that he will stick around as long as he can, but I think we are past the point of counting on Montrezl Harrell for legitimate NBA minutes. Now, for the Sixers, I do want to bring up, he did re-sign here this offseason, Montrezl Harrell. He had a player option at the end of last year. He did initially opt out of that player option. Got a little bit of a test of the market. There wasn't much out there for him, kind of understandably so, as he was really limited in the minutes and basically unplayable by the end of the season last year. Paul Reed more than certainly hopped him on the depth chart, and there was even looked at other minutes like playing P.J. Tucker at the 5, things like that really just made it no world where Montrezl Harrell saw the floor. There was not a strong offer out there. I do think there was a little bit of a good faith between Montrezl Harrell and the Sixers in the way that the relationship is good. They were happy having him around. By him opting out of the player option, which he could have just opted in and been with the Sixers anyway, by him opting out and taking a veteran's minimum deal, it put a little more money in Montrezl Harrell's pocket and also counted a little less against the cap. So I do think that there was a little bit of an in good feeling kind of deal there that was struck. And even though it is disappointing that it's clearly not going to work out, we're not going to see him on the floor likely for the entire extent of this year. He will be a guy that, maybe he can be our Udonis Haslem here in Philadelphia this year. And as far as how it impacts the Sixers specifically, we got this tweet from Sixers Adam talking about the designated player exception. We've seen this used for guys like Lonzo Ball with the Bulls to open up some cap space for the team. Not quite the case with Montrezl Harrell and the Sixers here. According to the Sixers source, which was clearly corrected, Sixers Adam was corrected by a Sixers source here, the DPE would be worth 50% of Harrell's salary in free agent and 50% plus $100K in a trade, so 1.1 mil there. That's really not enough to move the meter for the Sixers in terms of what they're looking to get done. The biggest shoe still to fall is what happens with James Harden, and that is the holdup with all Sixers roster moves at this point in time. They still have 14 players on the regular roster, which leaves a spot open now with Montrezl Harrell. If they do apply for this designated player exception, which I'm not 100% confident that they will or not, that's going to be more of a conversation with doctors. If you do declare that player is not allowed to play on the floor for the entire year, for the entire extent of the season. if Montrezl Harrell wants to get back out there, it wouldn't surprise me if they just kind of leave it alone and eat the money. That's not game-changing money when we're talking about these types of players and the frame that these Sixers are in. So it wouldn't surprise me if it just stays that way, but that is something to weigh. And the biggest guy that I do think this impacts from the Sixers' perspective is Filip Petrusev. And this is a guy who was a draft and stash guy, played at Gonzaga, went overseas, has spent the past couple years overseas, won Adriatic League MVP. He's been pushing to come to the NBA for the past couple seasons this year. Had a very nice year overseas, and I hate to poo-poo this guy and look down on him, but I just don't believe in him as an NBA player, and especially seeing him these past couple years in Summer League, I struggle to put my finger on like a defining skill that will keep him in the NBA. He's a little bit too slow on the perimeter move. He's not a high-level shot blocker. His reputation is as like a stretch big man, but he's really not a good three-point shooter. And even beyond that, he's not a willing three-point shooter that he really has to be open for him to shoot it. So there's not much respect in terms of a shooting gravity standpoint. I hope that he proves me wrong and that he looks awesome in a Sixers uniform. The deal that they agreed to with Petrusev was more or less a non-guaranteed deal. Very similar to what was done with Trevelyan Queen last year with the Sixers during training camp then, that there is a set amount, more or less a signing bonus that they are guaranteed, and they're really going to give you the opportunity to make the roster. And if you do, more power to you. We will see you in a Sixers uniform all season. And if you don't, it's not that much of an expense to the team. So that's kind of the situation with Petrusev. With Montrezl Harrell now being out for the foreseeable future, this is a huge opportunity for him to lock down. And of course, we know we still have Paul Reed coming back, who was probably the prize of the offseason, just bringing him back, if we're being honest, based on the low standards. And another guy who's a big factor is Mo Bamba, who I think is a positive addition. Even though he has his skeletons in his closet and has yet to fully put the pieces together, he is a high-level shooter. He's a guy who has a good relationship with Joel Embiid. He's more of a true big man than we've seen from several of the backup options, and I'm excited to just see a different look of what he could bring. Both Paul Reed and Mo Bamba have talked about playing next to Joel Embiid as well, so there's going to be some creative stuff in terms of the Twin Towers lineup. I have another video coming out soon talking about why I think that can be impactful and why those guys doing the dirty work could further open things up for Joel, but it will be seen. This is a little wrench thrown in as far as the backup center position, and we'll see what happens from there. Now, on the other side of things, the other topic that I wanted to bring up here is how we just can't get rid of Doc Rivers. And the reason that I say that is because the news recently broke of Doc Rivers being chosen to be a part of ESPN's new Big Three in the broadcasting booth. So that, of course, means Doc Rivers alongside Mike Breen and Doris Burke. I've seen Doris Burke get a lot of slander for this in this pairing. For me, I think Doris is fine. I understand the frustration. She's not perfect. You can have your nitpicks. There's no doubt about it. For me and for Doc Rivers, for Sixers fans, this is one of those, maybe the Doc Rivers in Philadelphia would have been a little bit more bearable than him on television. I can already hear the constant digs that he's going to be throwing at the Sixers franchise. And the reason that I say this is because I honestly felt bad for Doc Rivers for getting fired this year. I've been an anti-Doc guy. I've been frustrated. There's a ton of things you can critique, whether it be his old-fashioned offense, his inability to adapt with the times, the repetitive offensive system, which was essentially give it to Joel Embiid and everybody else watch, the lack of flexibility on the fly for rotations, the not giving young guys a chance. There's plenty of reasons to nitpick. My frustration was with how things went down in this offseason is last year was by far Doc Rivers' best coaching job as the Sixers head coach in his 3 seasons there. Last year was by far the best job that he had done. Them losing the playoffs was not Doc Rivers' fault by any means. And I know you can tie the correlation, throw the stats at me, the most playoff losses of any coach in NBA history, the only coach to blow multiple 3-1 leads, all these things. I get it. It's fair. It sticks. And they did essentially blow these series against the Celtics this year. But for me, this is way more on the shoulders of the James Harden and Joel Embiid. And the reason that it frustrates me further is the reports of after the game of James Harden basically forcing his hand and saying, I won't play for Doc Rivers. And then James Harden only to kind of force his way that he's not playing for the Sixers, period, at the end of this thing. So it left a little bit of bad taste in my mouth how Doc Rivers was run out the door, seemingly a thing that would be done to please James Harden, while Joel Embiid was kind of a little bit blindsided by it and frustrated by the decision. So I just didn't love the optics of it, and now we are going to see him on television for ESPN. I've heard good things about him as a broadcaster. I've seen a couple clips from back then. In my head, he is straight up a basketball coach. I don't remember him ever being an announcer. I'm a little confused in kind of I feel like ESPN is kind of making change for the sake of change that I personally like listening to Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson on the call. Mike Breen is terrific at his job, so I think he's going to be fine no matter who's in the booth with him. But it will be interesting to see. I will approach you with an open mind. I will give Doc Rivers a fair shake and give him a chance. I won't say I'm the most anti-Doc Rivers guy at this point. There's plenty that I was frustrated about, but I think for the most part, he was a guy who genuinely tried his best. He did help elevate Joel Embiid's game to another level. Tyrese Maxey got significantly better underneath him. There's things that you can still attribute positive characteristics. So hopefully there are warm feelings in return. We will see what happens there. Overall, it's going to be an interesting season. There's going to be much more to break down. I appreciate all you guys for tuning into this video. Make sure to drop a like on it, drop a subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. Let me know how much you were dreading Doc Rivers hearing his raspy voice on television once again, and if there should be any waves made about Montrezl Harrell tearing his ACL. So prayers up for Trez. Can't wait to hear Doc, and I will talk with you guys next time. Peace.